Hello, and welcome to the Office of the Patriot. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back, and thank you for your continued viewership. It is appreciated. My name is Myron Ybarra, and I'm your host. Today's discussion is about racism. We hear that term being thrown around quite a bit lately, so I think it's time to go back and look at what it really means and find out if it's as prevalent as we are being made to believe. So, according to Merriam-Webster, racism is having, reflecting, or fostering the belief that race is a fundamental determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherently superiority of a particular race. In lay terms, it is a belief that a particular race is superior to all other races. But do we really have a problem with racism in this country? I don't believe we do. What I believe we have is a significant portion of the population feeling that they've been slighted in one way, shape, or form, and branding the reason for that perceived injustice as racism. You hear claims like, I didn't get hired because I'm fill in the blank, or I got profiled because fill in the blank. What this amounts to is a mechanism to relieve oneself of responsibility. And I'm going to explain with an example of what happened to me when I first moved to the Central Valley of California. And you tell me in the comment sections, do you believe the behavior I experienced was racist or not? So in 1990, my wife and I had just moved from Southern California into an apartment in the northwest end of Fresno, California. Back then, this area was really rural. There weren't very many businesses or homes in the area. It was primarily made up of farmland, which meant that there were some really affluent families mixed with a lot of blue-collar families. After getting all the furniture moved into the apartment, my wife and I took a trip to the supermarket, which was about 3 miles away, to stock up. As we walked in, we made our way to the produce section. In the produce section, they had these square bins in the center of that produce section that were about 4 by 4, filled with various fruits and vegetables. So I walked up to the bin that had some apples that I was going to fill my bag with, and my wife walked to another area of the produce section. Across from the bin I walked up to was a Caucasian woman. She appeared to be maybe in her late 60s, maybe mid 60s, and was very nicely dressed. She looked up as I approached, so I nodded in greeting. At that point, she clutched her purse and quickly walked away to another bin. I was dumbfounded. So I located my wife and walked up to tell her what had happened. I concluded my recollection of the event with, "That woman's a racist." And my wife, being the reasonable person that she is, thought I was exaggerating the whole incident, so I proceeded to walk to another bin where that same lady was to prove that it had actually happened. This time, my wife was watching, and the exact same thing happened. The lady clutched her purse again and walked away. So I walked back to my wife, and with an "I told you so" grin, said, "See?" We both immediately started regretting our move to the Central Valley. We had never experienced anything like this before. A woman I never met acting so overtly racist as a result of me approaching her. For the rest of the evening, that was a topic of discussion. However, after our emotions started to settle, we began to evaluate how and why we came to the conclusion that she was racist. So, sure, her behavior was somewhat indicative of racist mentality, but that was only correlating evidence. I really didn't know for sure if she was actually a racist. Truth is, I will really never know if she was racist, as she didn't express anything overtly to me while walking away. Ultimately, I found what I was doing was projecting a belief that she was racist and claiming that as fact because of how she behaved when we had that brief interaction. Sadly, that's what most people do when they come to the conclusion that someone is racist. They only use correlating evidence of an isolated incident. And why do we do this? Well, there are a number of reasons. It could be deflection of responsibility, or anger at perceived injustices, maybe heightened awareness. But recently, I've noticed it's because we have a government and a media that propagates the idea that certain groups of people are inherently racist. What we now have is a group of people who believes that other groups of people are racist based solely on the color of their skin, and they are exploiting this belief to excuse themselves of any responsibility. Now, I'm not saying that everyone does this, but there are a significant and growing number of these people. And it's just not aimed at certain racial groups. Many times it's aimed at political groups or law enforcement. I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody tell me they believe they've been profiled, and as a result of that profiling, they were pulled over and cited for a moving violation or some other violation of law. So, does law enforcement profile? Yes, but not in the way most people think. It's not based on racial, ethnic, or any other socioeconomic category. It's based off of observable traits or actions of criminal behavior. Here's an example. So let's say you're a law enforcement official and you're on patrol in a neighborhood you frequent on a regular basis because of a large number of hand-to-hand narcotic transaction arrests that occur. You see 4 Hispanic males you believe to be in their late teens or very early 20s driving down a residential street really slowly, right around 10 miles an hour. They're driving a 1995 Honda Civic. The occupants are turning their heads left to right as if they're looking for something. And they're all wearing team jerseys. And they have bandanas around their head, just above their brow. Do you believe these 4 people are casing a neighborhood, looking for maybe an easy score, or possibly a rival gang member? Or do you believe that they're just lost and in need of assistance? If you believe the latter, I've got some prime forest land for you in the high desert. So let's change the scenario, but let's only change one component of it. Now the drivers are all wearing white or light colored dress shirts with ties or dress suits. What are your thoughts now? If you believe they may be from a church group or getting ready for prom, that would be a reasonable deduction, and likely one that most law enforcement officials would also make. This deduction isn't based on ethnicity or race. In this case, it's based on behaviors and dress. What I find interesting in the hypocritical sort of way is that all human beings do this. It's part of the fight or flight reflex. Take that exact same scenario but put it in your neighborhood. Most people know the cars and the people who live in their neighborhood, and as a result of that, know the cars and the people who come and go in and out of their neighborhood. So let's say you're in your front yard mowing your lawn and you observe the first scenario. Would you have any concerns? Would you maybe try to memorize the license plate as they drove by, or maybe go inside your house? What about the second scenario? Would you have any concerns then? So it's easy to get wrapped up in the idea that racial bias and racism exists as a mainstay of American culture, with all of the media and political clamoring of the subject. However, this is far from the truth. Well, I'm sure there are some people who still believe that their race is a superior race, and these people are legitimately racist, but they are very few and far between. So, how do we move away from the idea that many Americans are systemically racist or inherently racist? Well, I think Morgan Freeman had the best idea. During an interview on 60 Minutes with Mike Wallace, Mr. Freeman was asked how to get rid of racism, and he said, "Stop talking about it." And I wholeheartedly agree. I look at racism as a wound on the skin of American history. Initially, that wound did need treatment, and with all the laws that have been passed as a result of the poor choices and decisions of the past, we no longer have a racially stratified society. Now, it may be stratified in other ways, but not racially. Now what we need to do is leave the wound alone and let it scab over and fall away. What we'll be left with is newly mended skin with a light scar. And that scar should serve to remind us of the poor decisions of our past, and will hopefully foster the wisdom that will ensure that we never risk injuring our society this way again. I want to thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Your viewership does mean a lot to me. If you enjoyed today's content, please take the time to watch some of my other episodes. And if you're so inclined, subscribe, smash the like button, and share my channel on your social media. And as always, have a great day and stay safe out there.